Ireland is a country of legend, myth and folklore, and nowhere are the tales more colourful than in the far southeast. One story tells how the devil, while being chased by St. Patrick, bit a chunk out of the Gulls mountains in his bid to escape. Hotly pursued by the saint, he raced to the coast with the rock between his teeth. Two and a half miles offshore, a piece of the rock fell from his mouth. Half a mile further on, he spat out the remainder and so created the Saltese Islands. Some years later, St. Patrick, wishing to visit the islands, set out by boat from Kilmore Quay, the nearest harbour on the mainland. But the vessel sprang a leak and sank, so the saint built a ridge of rocks out to Little Saltee. St. Patrick's Bridge was actually formed by glacial deposits at the end of the last ice age. At low tide, parts are still clearly visible. Within living memory, local farmers walked their cows across the rocky causeway and then swam them over to Great Saltee. Winter gales and storms leave the islands inaccessible for months. Lashed by the sea, the islands are soaked in salt water, hence their name. Local folklore says it's the devil's fury that whips the waves into a frenzy. The Saltees are among the oldest pieces of land in Western Europe, dating back some 2,000 million years. The granite is exceptionally hard, but wind and water have gradually eroded the coastline and left jagged cliffs, spectacular rock formations, and deep caves. In the 18th century, the Saltees were the haunt of pirates and smugglers. Contraband was offloaded behind these islands and stored in the caves. It's not hard to imagine these outlaws drinking the government's rum and arguing over the value of silks and hides. The locals claim they can sometimes catch their shouts and laughter over the raucous cries of the birds. The pirates are long gone, but the cliffs and ledges above their caves are still a haven for seabirds. The Saltees are the only islands off the south and southeast coasts of Ireland, and thousands of birds, like the kittiwake, come here to breed. In April, the guillemots arrive to prospect the ledges. After months at sea, landing on a narrow shelf takes a little practice. Great rafts of guillemots and razorbills assemble offshore, waiting for old partners to arrive or seeking new mates. The Saltees attract nearly 50,000 of them every year. These days, the islands are uninhabited by man. At the beginning of the century, an agricultural recession drove the farmers off the islands, much to the relief of the clergy on the mainland. For years, they had worried that, cut off from the church, the islanders were prey to the influence of Satan. The last farmer abandoned the Saltees in 1943, leaving them to return to their wild state. Only the hardiest salt-resistant plants grow here, But those which do survive face little competition and grow in abundance. Great Saltee is a little over a mile long, yet of the 400 species of birds that occur in Ireland, well over half have been recorded here. Huge numbers of migrants visit annually, and many land birds like the dunnock and meadow pipit breed on the islands. Rabbits were introduced by monks in the Middle Ages. They were a valuable source of food and fur, but they killed off most of the island's trees and ravaged crops. The puffins at least have benefited. They nest in abandoned rabbit burrows. Like all auks, puffins come ashore to breed. With their squat bodies and stubby wings, they're poorly equipped for flying. On windy days, they hang on the breeze for hours. It's an activity that seems to serve no real purpose. Perhaps it's just fun. Puffins live in large colonies for mutual protection. Disputes over mates and burrows are inevitable, but are quickly resolved. Other neighbours are more troublesome. Lesser black-backed gulls, their larger relative the great blackback, and herring gull all plague the puffins endlessly during the breeding season. It's not just eggs that they steal, they'll also snatch food from the smaller birds. Subjected to a brutal attack, a puffin wisely gives up its catch. The gulls are quite capable of fishing for themselves, but mugging is less effort. But the gulls do play a useful role in the colony. They pick up scraps of food and clear away corpses, keeping the nest area clean and free of disease. And they too have their problems to contend with. Great colonies of gulls once nested on the islands. Now their numbers are seriously depleted. The birds only supplement their diet by stealing from the puffins. The bulk of their food comes from the mainland. Gulls have scavenged from rubbish dumps for years, and recently this has been their downfall. The increased use of black plastic bin bags is the cause of the problem. Lying in the sun, the bags quickly absorb heat. Inside, the warm, moist environment is the ideal breeding ground for botulism bacteria. When the gulls eat contaminated food, they suffer a lethal dose of botulism. Orphan chicks have little chance of survival. The numbers of kittiwakes are also declining, but for different reasons. Each pair usually raises 2 young, but recently adults have struggled to rear 1. The chicks are starving to death. Kittiwakes are surface feeders, their diet consisting of small fish and crustaceans, creatures that are themselves declining, probably due to overfishing. While the delicate kittiwake is becoming rarer, another, more robust species is on its way up. The gannet is our largest seabird, 3 feet long with a wingspan of up to 7 feet. The first pair nested on the Saltees in 1929. Today, there are more than 1,000 pairs. They're one of the few seabirds apparently escaping the general decline. Their large size helps them resist the effects of the pollutants which kill smaller birds. They feed beneath the surface, where there are still plenty of healthy fish to be found. Gannets plunge dive from as much as 100 feet above the waves. Their skulls have shock absorbers to withstand the impact, and their wings fold for perfect streamlining. The auks also dive for fish, but they swim down from the surface. Razorbills can stay below for up to a minute and descend to a depth of 80 feet. Underwater, a guillemot flies with grace and ease. The coastal waters round the Saltees are rich in life. Dolphins are still seen here, although basking sharks, once numerous, have been hunted out. While the dolphins move on, the auks return to feed their hungry chicks. Of all the auks on the Saltees, guillemots have always been the most numerous, although their fortunes have been mixed. In the early 1960s, the colony numbered 30,000. But in 1969, a combination of bad weather and depleted fish stocks caused the population to crash, leaving only 5,000. Fortunately, numbers are rising again. There are two types of guillemot. The bridle variety, which looks as if it's wearing white spectacles, is the rarer of the two. Just a few yards from the cliff edge, land birds attend to their chicks. Oyster catchers provide their young with worms and grubs until they're a month old and fully fledged. In contrast, pheasant chicks instinctively know how to feed and fend for themselves and are deserted after 2 weeks. But until then, their mother makes every effort to lead them from danger. The amazing number and variety of birds and the scenic beauty draws thousands of tourists to the Saltees each summer. The majority of visitors come to bask in the sunshine and gaze at the views. It's the more intrepid who cause problems. Visitors straying into their colony cause brooding gulls to desert their nests. Eggs and chicks may get cold and die, and gulls are cannibals. An unprotected nest is a source of food. Several people have plummeted to their deaths while clambering about the unstable scree above the cliffs. The quest for the best view seems to blur their sense of caution. At the beginning of the breeding season, the Gannet colony extends right across the crown of Catcliffe Rock. A few weeks after the tourists arrive, there are none left at the summit. And by the middle of the breeding season, they've been driven to the edge. Birds attempting to nest at the top are doomed to failure. In most cases, the visitors are ignorant of the damage they do. There are no signs to warn them or barriers to keep them at a reasonable distance. The human invasion has contributed to the decline of the puffin. Peregrine falcons and corncrakes are just two of the species that no longer successfully nest here. Cormorants, once a common breeding bird on Great Saltey, have fled to Little Saltey, which is rarely visited. It's now one of the biggest colonies in Ireland, boasting over 300 pairs. But how long will it be before their seclusion is shattered? It's not just the tourists who flock to Kilmore Quay that pose a threat to wildlife. The fishing here is profitable, and with it comes danger: discarded nylon netting. Almost every gannet nest now contains some man-made fibre, useful to us, but potentially lethal here. Scientists scale the cliffs every year to ring chicks and collect population data. Nerves of steel and a head for heights are essential qualifications for the job. The volume of netting hanging from the cliffs is a sad reflection of the quantity floating at sea. As the chicks explore their lofty nurseries, many become entangled. The nest becomes a trap from which they will never fly. These chicks were lucky. Not every colony is monitored by scientists. Adult birds are vulnerable too. Many get caught and drown in drift nets. Birds are not the only victims. A nylon necklace is as good as a noose around the neck of a seal. If the oceans are being treated as a world rubbish dump, the consequences are filthy beaches, ruined holidays, pollution, and death at sea. July, and the auks' breeding season draws to a close. At 3 weeks old, the chicks can't fly, but they can swim. With the constant threat from marauding gulls patrolling the cliffs, the open ocean is a safer bet. Shepherded by their parents, the chicks take the plunge under cover of darkness. When the puffin chicks are 6 weeks old, their parents desert them. After a few days, hunger forces them to leave the burrow. Like other auks, they leave at night to escape the attention of the gulls, but make it to the sea entirely alone. Fortunately, they instinctively know how to swim and catch food. The fine weather breaks in mid-autumn. Shrouded in mist, the islands have a magical charm. At this time of year, the ocean is wild and unpredictable, but its sudden changes of mood are no threat to the animals that are adapted to exploit it. It's now that the grey seals converge on the salties. When people lived on the islands, the seals avoided them. As soon as they left, they moved in. The pregnant cows heave themselves up the beaches to give birth. Once ashore, they won't feed again until their pups can look after themselves. Late September is the time of the bulls. The females come into season almost as soon as their pups are weaned. As soon as they've mated, the hungry cows head off back to sea. In the shallows, mature males do battle for the right to mate. Eventually, the seals too desert the salties, but they no longer leave them to the mercy of Satan and the ravages of winter. They're still the stage for an annual wildlife spectacular. However, the islands now need protecting by something more than a centuries-old legend.